Hi, it's Vera. Welcome to the 8th episode of the second season of the PL Pod. This podcast is something of an event tonight. I have a Zoom room full of poet guests. My term as Poet Laureate is coming to a close in early 2022, and like the Poet Laureates before me, I've had the pleasure of adding my own addition to the Terra Nord e-zine that Roger Nash started when he was the city's first Poet Laureate. This one is called Gathering, and I am recording this as a video also. And so everyone wave for the camera. Thank you. And the radio, of course. There are 11, and so there's no time to lollygag, so we'll just jump right in. I'd like to start with Markus Schwabe, and I'm happy to introduce Markus Schwabe of the CBC Morning North fame. He will offer up some interesting haiku. Go ahead, Markus.
So these are the seasons of Northern Ontario. Fluttering, falling, orange and yellow and red. Soon the snow will fly. Snow piles on a branch, bright rays of sun push it off, dangles like a rope. Listen, the sing-song, adrenaline rush, such joy. The robins are back. Refreshingly wet. Now the dance to the towel. Ooch, each, ouch, bare feet.
Thank you, Markus. Those are delightful.
My pleasure.
And I'm happy to have you here. Following Markus, we're going to ride right along to Shelley Burden. Shelley is of Copper Cliff, not on the radio, a retired teacher, and she is going to read her poem, I Am.
I am. Do you know who I am? Judging my worth, seeing only a wrinkled face, gnarled hands, pale eyes, when there is so much more. Gentle yet strong, hands that grasped, entwined, clutched, tenderly hold a child's hand. Rhythmically pulsing, this heart weathered by loss of family, friends, dreams, still beats a heart song. Always moving forward, a mind that questioned, pondered, watched, resurrects a childlike curiosity. Warm and wise eyes that have scanned, judged, searched, observe the world through a softer lens. Lines carved by tears and laughter, a face remembered by lovers, children, and friends, softens as hands fold in acceptance. Do you know who I am? I am all of this.
Thank you, Shelley. That's lovely. I think we're all underestimated as we get older, and that's a great discussion of being underestimated in spite of ourselves. I'd like to introduce you now to Laurence Stephen. His poem is called A Woman Without. Laurence.
A woman without. Through the tenuous shears, the woman's face stares at the road. The lanes of traffic glide from homes to destinations, or at least in her perception, they appear to trace persistent patterns, gestures which deride her static solitude, her sacrifice. Her children's smiles, framed in close embrace of youthful promise, mock her calcified condition from their dusted shelves. Her creased brow reflects the pressure of cracking ice. The tears wear runnels down her face. They know no home or destination, and her hands that madly wring the knuckles own no beads or sense of unconcern. These would bestow a modicum of order on the sands that ply her hourglass in anarchy. Supply a basin where her tears could flow in justifying torrent from her glands as prelude to the cleansing her soul needs, or washing of the hands self-righteously. but neither avenue is hers. She sits on terror's lip and listens to the tune that emptiness is chording in her brain in 4/4 time. Her rootless focus flits from nick to knack in hopes of memories strewn like lifelines, finding home to destination. But finding nothing sure, she counterfeits a world of dreams she knows are not immune to life's imperatives and vivid stain. Evading these has been her one salvation.
Next up, we have Sabine Wilder, who is first time published in this little zine, and I'm so pleased to have her. Her poem is called The Color of Living. Please go ahead, Sabine.
Thanks, Vera. You did manage to steal my first poetry publishing credit, so congratulations. The Color of Living. I am photosynthesizing, taking the sun and green leaves into my eyes, converting them into chemicals, signaling my brain to feel happy. The sun gives me energy. Without it, I wither, grow sleepy, and hibernate. But long summer days allow me to grow, sprouting new branches, seeding new ideas. Long winters of brown and gray deaden me, but green brings me alive again. The color of living, the cycle of breath, and photosynthesis.
Thank you, Sabine. That's such a beautiful poem. I really love it.
Thank you.
Every time I photosynthesize, I just get more gray hair. Sad, really.
At least you don't lose it.
Oh, there are days. On behalf of Elsie Hornby, who couldn't make it here tonight, I am reading on her behalf, and she has written a series of haiku. Bent and gnarled, the tree among the saplings, still standing. Wandering search from room to room for his memories. Daydreaming, a book half read sits on the shelf. Whisper of wind in the trees, barely audible now, above the rustle of leaves. Weeping willow, shedding its leaves, autumn's tears. A blanket of snow covers the flower bed, winter's duvet. I have to say that last is my favorite. The idea of snow being a duvet takes some of the chill off, don't you think? Elsie is a very good haiku poet. I really enjoy her work. Suzanne is up next. Now, Suzanne is an artist, but also a poet, and she has contributed a haibun today to the Terra North Zine, and it is called How to Nuisance. And it's lovely. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Shimmer purple-green against gray-black striped palette, orange accents. Childhood memories of Johnny Pasquale's garage filled with pigeons. I saw it once, an honor to be invited into a magical place. Little nesting boxes with bright-eyed heads poking out. Soft darkness filled with gentle coo, coo, coos. A square of light, freedom for flight. Messengers, decorated war heroes, feathered friends. The rock pigeon, origin of all pigeons, once revered and now not. Intelligent, with a built-in homing system. Used as messengers, decorated war heroes. Even Darwin fell under their spell, breeding them for experiment, and gathering evidence for his theory of evolution by natural selection, and joining a group of fanciers. War was declared on pigeons as the domestic became feral, proliferating and defecating on statues, landmarks, and sidewalks. window ledge nests, man-made cliffs, resourceful. 8 watching me from their perch on my telephone wire, 2 more roosting on my shed roof, pooping on my shed roof, waiting for my neighbor to fill his bird feeder. More join the flock daily. They empty the feeder, hanging on it upside down to clean it out. Nuisance. I ask my neighbor to stop filling the feeder. They are the dirtiest of birds, I say, proliferating and defecating, spreading disease. I use the popular nickname rats on wings. I remind myself to think of history, messengers, war heroes, and Darwin's darlings. I remind myself to think of Johnny's magical garage of pigeons. Honored in war, fallen from grace, hero to nuisance.
Very good, Suzanne. That's a nice haibun. I like that one. As you may know, haibun and haiku and senryu and anything in the Japanese form is my thing. So it makes me happy. Thank you, Markus. Thank you, Suzanne. The rest of you get to work. Next up, Chloé LaDuchesse, the 5th Poet Laureate and a 2021 Governor General's Award nominee for Poetry en Français. Congratulations, Chloé, and welcome.
Cambrousse. On verra si demain suffit à nous réconcilier avec l'art perdu de la quiétude, les réveils vidés de leurs fêtes, les petits déjeuners de Cambrousse, la densité des vies qui passent à côté de nous sans se dévoiler. À tâtons, retrouver le goût des autres, le pied toujours tendu vers la sortie de secours.
Thank you so much. That was beautifully done.
Thank you.
Next up is Laura Forshu. And she is going to read Footpath to Serenity, which is very topical in these times, given the environmental progress we've made, and it speaks to that. So go ahead, Laura.
All right. Yes, because personally, I'm involved in regreening, being part of the Society for Horticulture, and VATAC. I helped out. We worked together. So here's the poem that I have that sort of celebrates that. Amble along the wooded trail without a care or concern among the pale, scarred birches. A pathway is strewn with ancient riverbed pebbles. Pick a flattened rock to skip on a nearby brook, while a downy woodpecker announces its presence with incessant knocking on a nearby poplar. Decaying leaves blanket the deciduous tree roots. The old growth scent from seasons past lingers. Feel the caress of the summer sunlight while picking the berry patches for the sweet taste of joy. How grateful are we for nature's bounty. Gone are the days of mustard-colored fumes. No yellow fog settles on the hills we walk. Blackened rocks are the reminders of what once was and what has ceased to be. No longer stunted growth and brown burnt leaves. Our lungs don't sting and our eyes don't water from the pollutants of our past. We breathe in the beauty of what is, and we exhale the scars of our past.
Very good. That's lovely, Laura. And it's so true. We are lucky to be in now rather than then. I don't think we're out of the woods yet. Speaking of woods, so many million trees planted. It's an interesting poem, Laura, and I really enjoyed the balance of the two parts of it. Next up, we have Joanne Renzoni, who is also in the environmental sector, but in a whole different direction. So go ahead, Joanne.
My poem is called Shore Dreams. I sit by the shore. No breeze. No sound save buzzing cicadas, the distant splash of surfacing fish. The moon traces a path across inky, glistening water, almost to my feet. A night for stargazing. Orion guards the Milky Way. His belt points to Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. The water beckons. I want to swim along the corridor to the moon, become part of the magic. There is no one else in the world tonight. I feel I will live forever.
Thank you, Joanne. I think we all have those moments where we just feel so small and yet so bonded with everything at the same time. And that's a really nice one. Thank you. Now, Emily Deangelis, as I may or may not have said, is unable to make it, and I am going to read her haibun on her behalf. And I will read Black Sheep by Emily Deangelis. It's told in 3 voices, which is very innovative for a haibun. Mm-hmm. I perch on a random tombstone, fuming at his tardiness. My brother had one job to do. Bring mother to the cemetery for noon. I took care of the rest, gravedigger, priest, stone engraver, caterer. And now a crowd of people are gathered around an empty hole, freezing in the early spring wind. The heels on my new black suede Kate 85 Louboutin pumps are caked in mud. Someone suggests starting a fire. Most people snigger at the remark. What would mother think? Ambitious, successful overachiever, firstborn. I'm late. The story of my life, a faulty alternator on an old clunker, and I'm stuck on the side of the road. I call my sister and I tell her what's going on. She's not happy. Is she ever, though? Mother is sitting in the back, fortunately, saying nothing. Unrooted, middle child, black sheep. I am dead. I didn't think I'd be gone so soon. In a way, though, I am grateful for the break, for the purpose on for the pause on disappointment and stress. His intentions, I know, are always good, but lately I wonder what he will amount to. Jobless, homeless if I didn't let him live in my basement. Not a thing like his sisters. I know parents shouldn't compare their children, but... Dashing between graves, urn clutched in her son's hands, late for her own funeral. And it's okay to laugh at that one. It's hilarious, the idea that people joke about being late for their own funeral, but I guess that's how it's done. And she based that on a true story. Yeah. So interesting. The last person in this book, and I can't believe we got through this in the usual 20 minutes of a podcast because look at us all, is Rebecca Salazar, who is the second Sudbury nominee for the Governor General's Award in 2021. Her poem is called As Our Bodies Rise, Our Names Turn into Light. After Dominic Bichard, Kendra Guidolin, and Charles Wright. Cracked across the transcendental on the black rock quarries of our youth, we cannot labor to unbind our bodies from themselves. When we leave our bodies to their lizard-brain devices, neat facades of brightness, this is no virtue, but a suicide. Black rocks, leaching their ancient acid rain into new water, winnow down cut bluffs, feed craggy growths of jack pines, grandmothering cancers we map in the spaces between self-control and self-survival. Call our names back to ourselves the way new spruce are germinated underground, regreening as a purgative return. Where were we when the Where were we when the calendars were made? When seedling spruce were destined first to feel the sun on rising from abandoned mines, staining our hands with dampened loam. That's Rebecca Salazar, who was unable to make it tonight. Now, because we have some time, because we zoomed through this Zoom, maybe we could just have a conversation about poetry and how we approach it as individuals. I will choose a victim. And we'll go with Markus because, as you know, he has to leave early if we are not done.
So how do I approach poetry? You know, I don't even consider myself a poet there. I just, or maybe I do. I don't know. I words is part of my work, right? For CBC Radio. So I'm writing every day, but, normally it's just to communicate as straightforward as possible. So poetry is a little bit of a break for me. I think, the most significant poem I may have written was, for my sister's 50th birthday a number of years back, and brought her to tears. So that was sort of nice. And I like rhyming too. So normally when I write, I like the sound of the words that they make together. And if it's funny or punny, I kind of like that too. So yeah, it's just fun playing with words.
Yeah.
Instead of working with words, which is what I have to do all the time.
Yeah. Well, in relation to rhyming, there is a man in the U.S. named Brad Bennett, and my group who's involved in this podcast knows. I've mentioned it before. Brad Bennett is big on euphony, about bringing sound rhyming into poetry so that it makes it more pleasing to the ear, makes it almost like song. Mm-hmm. And so if you're interested in him, Brad Bennett, he's very good.
Thank you. I remember taking a university course, a creative writing course 1,000 years ago. And there was a section on poetry and the rhythm of poetry, and I got it. And it was, to me, I found it amazing how people struggled with the rhythm of the words and where the emphasis was. And because you had to, say where the emphasis was in each particular word, or how it was supposed to be read out in a poem. But for whatever reason, I got it. And maybe because I played in a marching band when I was young, and it was music, and you had that sort of musical training. Mm-hmm. But I like that, the rhythm that words bring, and how that just adds to the whole texture of a poem. When it's read aloud, I like them to be read aloud as opposed to reading them in a book as well. I like the sound of poetry.
I do too. So we will now put the emphasis on Joanne. Joanne,
okay, I'm glad Markus went first. I love reading poetry, and I'm thankful for the teachers that we had way back when, who forced us to memorize poems like Quinquamir of Nineveh from Distant Ophir, Rowing Home to Haven from Sunny Palestine. I don't know if you remember these poems, but I still remember most of the poems that we had to memorize. And I love reading poetry. I have poetry books from different periods, from way back when, from Keats and Shelley and so forth, and more modern, up-to-date poems. And when I think about writing a poem, for me, it's usually makes me really look at the world. Like sometimes we don't pay attention to what's around us, but when we kind of search and look and have those special moments that we can try to express in poetry.
I would agree with that. I think when we quiet ourselves, we write better poetry. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's just target Sabine now because she muted herself.
I'm trying to be polite and not make noise while other people are talking.
Aren't you the one? Okay, go ahead. Tell us how you approach poetry.
Well, as you mentioned, I'm new to this, and really I came into poetry because my job as an editor required me to be able to evaluate poetry. And I feel very comfortable with fiction and nonfiction, but poetry was sort of something that I'd never really gotten very deep into before. So I think I learned best by doing. So I ended up working with the Writers Guild and the Poetry Inner Circle and coming up with stuff. And that's kind of, it's been a very interesting experience for me, I think. I'm still learning all kinds of new things. But having sort of a community of poets to talk to and have them give feedback and stuff has really helped my process a lot. And I'm really kind of enjoying the learning process that I'm going through right now.
Yeah, I think we are, if we're lucky, we're always learning new things. And even with poetry, it evolves all the time. And so it's good to keep your eyes and ears open. When you read up-to-date journals, you find new things happening in them and you wonder, oh, that was an interesting thing they did there. So let's just jump over to Suzanne, who in my screen is on the left. Suzanne, your approach.
You're on my left.
Oh, well, there you go.
My approach is I'm a visual artist mainly, and I started adding poetry to my work. I just wanted to have some words in my work a little bit more than just, I don't mean just painting, but just painting or sculpture. And I approach the words by what I see around me every day. I am always looking for ideas or thinking of ideas, and I walk a lot, and I have my phone with me, and I'm always writing little sayings down or little ideas down, and then I, at some point, start putting them into a form of poetry or storytelling. And it's usually about what I've been doing and what's around me. And like the story about the pigeons was really in my backyard, seeing them every day. And
well, it's interesting how you drew memoir into that as well. If through your own present day activity, it brought back a memory which you used in conjunction with today. So that was really interesting.
Thanks. That was a wonderful memory. I can't, I can feel being in that garage with the pigeons around me.
Yeah, I can almost smell it.
And at that time, like now, if I went into a garage with pigeons, I might think, ooh, but at that time when I was a kid, it was like, wow, this was amazing,
Yeah. I can remember going into Home Depot in the winter and there were still birds twittering around inside. That was kind of nice. Yeah. Laura, what is your approach to poetry?
Well, I have to admit that usually I find being outdoors and just a sense of bringing back memories of certain things from the past, like this in this poem, the mustard colored fumes. I mean, this is a past I lived when I was a child. Like a lot of that I experienced. So it's partly experience and partly memory. And also just using your five senses, like to explore what's around you when you're out there. And also observing other things that are going on around you, with people and environment and interactions. If that gives you any idea of how I see it, when I'm trying to put something together, to jot down ideas and that what I'm going to work with in that. So.
Well, and I've read other poetry by you in the Good Times magazine. And I get what you're saying. I can see that in your poetry. So anyone who wants to read more of Laura can probably read it in Good Times magazine at some point. I don't know if you're in there this time, but someday.
Well, yeah, I'd probably put something in again. I don't do it all the time, but
yeah. Well, I mean, it's nice to be published, but it's not the end all and be all.
Yes.
For a moment there, I thought maybe you had been to one of my haiku workshops, because with haiku or any of the Japanese forms, observing and being outside and centering yourself and using your five senses is all part of that activity. So good to know.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it works with every poetry.
It does. When I was at the island, this is at the many years ago, that was my first really, I love doing this. I like writing poetry. Not that I didn't do it before, but we basically walked on the island and we just experienced what was going on around us. I'd never been in this one area, and that gave me inspiration in itself.
Is that the workshop that was led by Irene Golas?
No, I think it was led by, I'm trying to think who had the writers group there for years.
Margot Little.
Yes, Margot Little. It was her. That was quite a while back.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's still a force.
Good to hear. Good to hear that. Yes.
Okay, Shelley, tell us all about it.
Well, tell us all about it. Well, I've always liked poetry. I like writing poetry, and as a teenager, I wrote all these love things and, disappointment and all that sort of stuff. But if I was thinking about what my poems are usually about, and they're usually about people, and they're usually about interactions or family or how I feel. It's a lot to do with feeling. The poems that I write, like I wrote one about my dog, my rescue dog, and the feelings she would have. So to me, it's all based on that sort of thing. Feelings always comes into it big time.
Well, I heard a quote that said, poetry is emotion.
Yeah.
It's not the retelling of an emotion. It is the emotion that you're in. So that's interesting. Well, anyone want to add anything further to their poetic life?
Vera, you never told us your inspiration. You've got to contribute here.
Yes.
My inspiration. Well, my inspiration is I am a people watcher. I don't know if it's because I'm nosy or if it's just that I really enjoy people's lives and getting to know things about them. And that's where it started. But when you're writing haiku or senryu, which is a human haiku, it's about quirks of people. And boy, I having been a people watcher my whole life, it was the perfect poetry for me, the senryu. And then writing haibun, because I like to write, I also write prose and fiction. And so using that love to write haibun is like a double gift to me. So that's my inspiration. And I really enjoy it. Now, we've reached the end of another podcast. So I will just tell people, when you want to read this zine, it is going to be available online at the library. They will also have copies of this little booklet on their shelves, and they will be available to read there as well. There will be the podcast will go up on the 24th of December, or possibly before. And there are many ways to access it. It's called Gathering. And I would like to thank Roger Nash, who without his guidance as the first poet laureate of Sudbury, I think we would all have less to go by, if that makes sense to anyone. So thank you. At the end of another podcast, you know what I always say. Write something. It really feels good. And for the radio people, I will tell you, everyone is waving. Thank you, everybody.